Good morning to all of you wherever you are. I'm Pearson Bowen. It is Friday, the 19th of March, 2021. Yep, let's get going this morning as we turn our attention now to the Barbados Accreditation Council. Happy to be joined this morning by the Executive Director in Lisa Gale as we look to the work of that association. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Pearson. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Hope you're doing well as well. Now,
Doing
we've
well.
heard of the Barbados Accreditation Council. And for a lot of people, perhaps you've not heard enough in recent time. So let's do a little bit of a reminder as to what the Barbados Accreditation Council is. What is it?
Yes. So we are the national external quality body where we accredit and register higher education institutions as well as programs. We also have a pretty important role as it relates to movement of labor across the region, and that is to facilitate skilled nationals. So we actually issue and verify the skills certificate. Those are the two main facilitation services that the Barbados Accreditation Council offers, and there are several attendant services across the work that we do. We've been in existence for a long time. We are some 16 years. We celebrated 16 years last year, so by November this year we will be 17 years. We're established by an act of parliament, so we aren't just any organization. The CARICOM heads would have met many years ago and they would have sought to facilitate movement across the region. Barbados Accreditation Council facilitates that by the issuing and the verifying of the certificate. And then a very critical role of what we do, which is external quality. We make sure that the higher institutions are facilitating the requisite services to the students and making sure that the students get what they're supposed to be getting, global education, making sure that it is certified, making sure that it is quality. We facilitate that at the Barbados Accreditation Council.
Let's break that down just a little bit for Mr. Man on the street, because, you hear
Yes.
that and you figure, all right, that happens in a back room somewhere and they talk and then they come tell us. But you're saying to me
Yes.
today, given the pandemic and how we can't know ourselves have those face-to-face contacts, and I want to do some online learning, that
Yes.
you can assist me in knowing whether or not I am actually receiving this education from an accredited organization. How does that work?
Yes. So even without COVID, there are many persons who would have been participating in online training throughout the globe, and some students may very well want to leave Barbados, as you know, after you have qualified at the CXC level, because bear in mind, Accreditation Council deals specifically with higher education, which is post-secondary. We do not deal with education at the secondary level. It has to be beyond the secondary level. It could be tertiary or post-secondary. And bearing in mind that all tertiary education is not post-secondary. So the broader category is post-secondary, and then tertiary would fall within there because you know the difference between tertiary and
Yes.
post-secondary. So there will be a student who wants to leave Barbados and they will be checking, this is only but one of the services, and they will be checking to determine whether or not their school is accredited. That's one of the functions that we provide. We look at the institution, we check its program and as well as its institution. We check the institution as well as the programs to determine whether or not they fall in the accreditation status. We also facilitate as well local entities to accredit them as well as to register them. So whilst we check to facilitate that student, we also provide to Barbados. There are other attendant services, whether it is program approval. And I want to bring you right back to COVID because we're talking about using online training. So yes, we provide that one service, but then within the element of online training, there are new entities that are cropping up now that are trying to facilitate the space that we're in. And they're finding a challenge necessarily with creating a program that is of the standard. So the Accreditation Council will facilitate them in making sure that the institution follows the particular standards based on the guidelines that we have so that they are within the global recognition standard.
And why is that, all of that, so important to me, the individual? Because, whether it's accredited or not, I'm getting my education. So at the end of that whole process, why is it all important?
It is important because you want to ensure that if you have a particular category of a qualification, that it matches up with if you go to Michigan, if you go to Mongolia, if you go to Angola, if you go to Bermuda, wherever you go, you want to make sure that you're receiving a qualification that meets the specific standard that it identifies that it is. And the reason why it is important to check is because there are some diploma mills persons who just mill out
Yes.
or dish out a qualification
Yes.
without the standard. So you may let's take a doctor for example, which a doctor has to go through 4 years at the minimum, and then for specialization it can go up to 7 to 9 years. And let's say you have an institution that calls itself a medical school, and you give that student goes through all of the so-called training, missing out the clinicals, which may be a 2 year or a 1 year stage, which is crucial for any doctor, and then give them 15 years down the road and they have a surgery to do.
Yes.
It's hard. They missed the clinicals and they forgot something that was key. They have missed the global standard, Pearson, but they have also put themselves and all of these students and all of the persons who are going to be working on in a bad situation, or they can actually compromise healthcare. That you must make sure that the qualification that you have meets the global standard. Hence why we talk about global recognition. It may seem like it's repetitive, but it's ensuring that we follow the standards met for those particular services.
And that's a very good, real example. And I think it's so critical that everyone understands that. Now, for the individual as well, the one that we hear about a lot is that we want to be recognized for our skills because we want to be able to travel across the region in particular to be able to leverage those skills for employment. And that's another service that the Barbados Accreditation Council offers. So how can I do so as a media practitioner of X number of years, not necessarily having gone to the university to receive that diploma or degree? How can I now, using your services, be accredited?
Pearson, that is an excellent question. Well, the word is not accredited. You can travel. So 2004, the CARICOM Community, I actually have the act here, the CARICOM Community Movement of Skills National Act. There would have been a heads of government meeting in 2002, and then a subsequent one 6 months later, and then the ratification of it in 2003, which gave way to the act, which we now are operating under. And in that act, it foresaw 5 categories with persons within the region who could move. Media practitioners was one of the first. University graduates. We had sports persons. And there were 2 other categories. Now we have come there 16 years ahead, and we now have 12 categories of which you can travel. So you as a media person, having worked in the field for as long as I know yourself, you are eligible for a skills certificate. Of course, you have to bring your passport. There's a fee of $100 to facilitate the skills certificate. We also do it now within a 7-day period. In the past, we had a much longer period because we required police certificate of character and a whole host of other things. Now that we've streamlined that, persons can bring just the passport, make sure that the application is signed by a JP, make sure that you have the biodata page of the passport. You can bring certified copies of those as well. You don't necessarily have to bring the passport because the Justice of Peace could actually sign those for you. And if you have any other qualifications, that would be useful. Another part of it, if you fall within the category of the media practitioner, would be a letter of reference from the National Cultural Foundation or from the GIS in Barbados if you are a media practitioner. National Cultural Foundation will be specifically for artists.
Yes.
And then so that's really what you need, and then you can travel. We facilitate you. So for that man in the street who, I know there's a lot of miscommunication out there, and persons are saying that they're not so sure that they must have a degree. That is not accurate. And one of the specific things, I would have had a meeting only on Monday this week with the ambassador commission, and we were talking about what were the challenges in executing the movement of skilled nationals across the region and trying to see how we can reduce any of those encumbrances that we may interface along the way. And one of the specific ones was persons who are not sure, they're saying things that are not accurate. Without calling or without coming to the Barbados Accreditation Council, we are actually at Manor Lodge in St. Michael, Suite 1, Building 1. And we also have a Facebook page. We also have a website. So if you need information, there are options there where you can get that information. You can also call us. You can also call us at 535-6740.
I hear you saying the word
But yes.
bring, and given the protocols that exist still, and the fear is still in some people's minds, not everyone necessarily wants to have that face-to-face encounter. How else, for
Yes.
those who have that particular concern, how can they then still also access the service of the Barbados Accreditation Council?
Well, another good question. We are actually working through finalizing our bank facilitation so that persons can do the whole process from start to finish. That's not concluded as yet. And you would appreciate with the Anti-Money Laundering Act, there are a number of things that the institutions need to follow through first in order to finalize that process. But we are in the process. Persons can still actually reach out to us and ask questions. But at this point, we still have a face-to-face contact in order to complete that process of the application. Another part of that person is that persons who have skills certificates already, who are from other countries and come to Barbados to work, their skill certificate has to be verified. And that's another important service that we offer, the verification of existing skill certificates.
And the same
And
be
another
opposite.
myth, if
Go ahead.
sorry,
Go ahead.
there's another myth. There are persons who are non-Barbadians who we issue skill certificates to as well. So persons believe that it is only Barbadians that we issue skill certificates to. No, it is CARICOM nationals. It's CARICOM wide.
And I suspect the reciprocal is that if I were to travel as well, I can also walk into someone else's, another destination's accreditation council, and be accredited and be at least certified for who I am. There's so much more we could
Yes, you
talk
can.
about. Yeah, there's so much more we could talk about in this little short time, but I really want to thank you for joining us. Let's mark this to be continued if you don't mind, because there's so much a lot of people still need to know about as it relates to free
Yes.
movement of travel, to use their skills and to benefit within the region as well, and how that can work for us. So thank you so much, Executive Director Lisa Gale, for joining us this morning to begin to
Thank you so
unravel
much.
some of those cobwebs that we had in our minds about this. Good seeing you. All
Thank
the
you.
best this
My
weekend.
pleasure.
Thank
Take
you.
care.